Hey everybody, welcome back to the Simple Grace Podcast, where every single week we do our very best to help you, our church family, dive deeper into community to make sure no one walks alone. The last podcast before sabbatical time.
I know.
Remind everybody what your sabbatical is and why it's important.
Yep. Sabbatical comes from the word, basically the same word for Sabbath. It means rest. In the Bible, there's just a pattern of rest every 7 days, every 7 years, every 7 times 7. Just this is that kind of thing. And so it's been well over 7 years since my last sabbatical, and the elders were very kind and gracious to give me this gift of a couple months away and to refresh and to rejuvenate, spend some more time with family, think a little bit ahead about church, read up on some books that are just the list of books.
The piling.
So I want to catch up on that and just have some really good time with the Lord. And so I'll be traveling with my family at times. I'll be hitting a monastery up for 5 days and hanging out with some monks, and really excited about that.
I'm excited to hear about that.
That's going to be a new experience for me. That's certainly out of my realm of worlds, but I am looking forward to it all. So, and then we're going to land the plane with a sabbatical with actually the Dominican Republic trip. So the last week of my sabbatical is really the missions trip down there with our team. So I'm looking forward to that as well.
What I love about it is that it's not about just taking a rest. It's about being intentional in preparation for the next season. So it makes a lot of sense. Dusty, what are some of the things that you're looking forward to over the next couple of weeks or months within the church? We always like to talk a little bit about what's happening in the life of the church as we start the podcast.
Yeah, well, we're moving into the summer. So the summer for us is kind of a shift in focus. I know like the ladies are going on their retreat coming up here soon, so they get to do the same thing the guys did a couple weeks ago. But for us, it's really moving into this kind of a community, relaxed pace, but things that we can do with our community. So we're planning neighborhood night out. We're planning soccer camp. Just summer is a great way to connect with our community.
A couple of movie nights again. Right, we're doing that again.
Going on the calendar. Yep. Yeah, so a lot of family ministries, a lot of community ministries going on in the summer.
And I'm really excited because after starting in June, we're going to start our brand new sermon series, Summer in the Psalms. And so each week we're going to take a different psalm. We're going to unpack it. We're going to talk about some practical application. I'm really looking forward to that sermon series and what that means for our church family. So many exciting things happen coming up. And although we'll miss Dave, I'm sure we'll get along just fine without him.
I'm sure you will.
Oh, no!
When the cat's away. Anyway. Yep.
Well, good. Let's jump into this week's topic. We're in the PRISM model, PRISM, personal, reproducible, and this week,
It's intentional.
intentional. What's a working definition of intentional mean?
Oh man, I would say that's a good question. I didn't actually define intentional. I usually like to.
I know you know. I know.
And I really haven't thought about this, but it's got to be this purposeful focus that is disciplined and there's a lot of words that go around.
In my head, I had purposeful execution.
I like it. There we go. Let's go with that.
Yeah.
Yep.
I'm curious, Dusty. One of the things that Dave talked about in the sermon is personal or relational versus intentional. Where do you tend to fall? He if you might remember from the sermon, if you haven't watched yet, go to our YouTube page. But in the middle, he talked about that's where depth happens. So we're obviously all trying to strive for the middle. So don't come in there and say I'm in the middle. But where do you tend to lean more towards?
Yeah, I lean a little bit more towards intentional just by default than I do relational. Because I always want to know what we're doing with somebody, what the game plan is, and where we're trying to go together. I know my wife, she falls much more on the relational side. So I like to think we have a good combo approach going forward. But I go more intentional, which sometimes means I struggle with the relational side.
Sure.
Right. That's the downside of leaning one way or the other and not being perfectly in the middle, is that like the downside of intentional is that, people can accidentally think they're, you're viewing them as a project or like, hey, we're only in this to move towards a certain goal. And that's the side you have to be really careful about with intentional. And then the thing you have to be careful about on the relational side is you can just want to do things with people just for the sake of the relationship and having fun, and it never really goes anywhere other than we just really enjoy each other's company. So, to live on mission for the kingdom means we do have to strive for that balance between the two. But for me, definitely I lean more towards the intentional.
Yeah.
I'm more relational, surprising probably to no one.
No.
And so that means that I oftentimes have to be really purposeful in my intentionality and my purposeful execution. So kind of leaning into that. Where do you tend to lean?
no surprise. I tend to be intentional as well. I tend to see everything as a to-do list, and so, yep, just being honest. That's so it's hard to be sometimes sitting in a relationship and going like, what are we doing here? Like, like where's this going, kind of thing. Yeah.
What's the desired outcome?
For the relationship?
Yeah, I mean, that's a question that you're like,
Yep.
No.
Exactly.
That's one of the things I love most about disciple making is that it has a tendency to press us on all the sides where we fall short, right? And again, don't think of falling short as a judgment,
No.
as much as it is just a, hey, I'm not naturally wired that way. You're not naturally wired that way, and so the fullness of life with Christ comes when we lean into some of that.
Yep.
In your sermon, you mentioned kind of the 3 P's, and then there was a bonus one.
Yeah.
Take us through that, how this all plays together.
Well, yeah, intentionality means you have a plan that you gotta actually know where you're going and figuring out how to get there. So, when it comes to following Jesus, do we have an actual plan? Do we have, we've talked about on this podcast and other places, the rule of life, where you can kind of sit down and think about your habits and your disciplines and routines that what do you need to start doing? What do you need to stop doing to help develop the kind of person you want to be? And so, I don't think most people think in those ways when it comes to following Jesus, as of having a plan. But I think it's really, really important to start off that.
So the first P is plan. Second one is
Practices, right? So you don't plan, like, running the marathon was the metaphor, right? So you don't just get up one morning and run a marathon.
which, by the way, I think only one family in our church actually said that they did. It was the Rivesteins.
First hour at least.
Yeah.
It was, so that was funny. But yeah, so you don't just start off running a marathon. You have to have a plan, and part of that plan needs to involve certain practices. That's what we did all last year, actually. Every month we introduced or encouraged a spiritual practice for the month in our church community. And I think those are not the goal, but those help us get to the goal. Those help develop the kind of character that we are looking for, the kind of the life and the fullness of life we've been talking about. So practices are really, really important. And I like the word practice because it kind of takes the pressure off me when I'm thinking about I'm practicing these things. I'm not perfecting, like I'm not perfect at these things. And so I've been trying to practice Sabbath, and I sometimes do it well, and sometimes I do it really terribly. I try to practice scripture reading and meditation and memorization, and sometimes I get it. Sometimes I fall short of my goal, but we're practicing, right?
Practicing.
And it means movement. And I think movement is so important. If you get stalled out, that's where trouble lies. So,
And then the third one?
third one is perseverance, right? Intentional. The training versus trying verbiage. Trying is so half-hearted at times. If I'm just thinking in terms of trying, it's a to-do list. It's a check. I checked off the box. I tried it. It didn't work, and so therefore I'm done with it. But training is knowing. If you're training it, you're knowing you're not going to get it right the first time or the second time, and so there's a huge commitment piece that I think is that perseverance piece. When I'm training for something, I'm going to train until I reach my goal.
Yeah, there's a really cool billboard I just saw pop up. I think it's up in LA right now, and it was like a Twitter billboard or X billboard now, I guess. But all it said was the first time you do anything, you're going to be really bad at it.
Yeah.
Right? Your first podcast is going to be bad. Your first song you write is going to be bad.
Yep.
Everything you do for the first time is going to be bad. Same thing with our spiritual life, right?
Yeah.
And which is why the practice piece is super important. Like, you have to lean into that muscle, and you're not going to be good at any of that stuff naturally when you start.
Yeah.
Which one's hardest for you? Plan, practice, or perseverance?
Plan, for sure.
I like all three. So.
Which one's hardest, though? Which
I
one's
know,
the
I'm
one
trying to
that's
think.
the most of a stretch? For
For
me, it's perseverance.
is it?
Because I have it.
Yeah.
I I prefer to start things than finish them.
Well, I'm a
right?
T on the widget.
On the
That's a whole
tenacity, right? Yeah.
I have tenacity
Well,
in
just
me.
take the one that we didn't claim. You're that.
I was guessing that you would have been practiced because you like to be perfect rather than practice.
Yeah, that's
Like
probably
it's
true.
probably hard to give you a little grace and all that.
Yeah,
kind
that's
of.
true. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
We represent all three.
yeah. There we
for
go.
us.
Maybe.
With our powers combined,
bad for us, I don't know.
we are one disciple
You're
maker.
intentional.
Now, there was a bonus fee in there too, though, that you mentioned in the sermon.
Well, this is where it goes back to disciple making. And so having a personal trainer is a luxury. It is not a necessity. And so in your training, it's so nice to have somebody who's a little bit further ahead than you, who's a little bit more intentional with your time with them. And I think that's what a personal trainer is. And so they just kind of hold you accountable. They give you a better plan. They give you some better practices than maybe what you're accustomed to, and they can encourage and walk with you. And I think that's disciple making in so many ways. And so that's why we want to connect people in disciple making relationships. It helps bring that extra bit of intentionality that Jesus did with his disciples. So again, we're not saying you can't grow on your own at all, but
You will grow on your own.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, we're saying the opposite. You will grow on your own.
Yeah.
But it's hard to go as far
yeah,
and as fast as you possibly can without the personal trainer.
yeah.
We need to rebrand that. Luxury disciple making is what we do here.
There you go.
Plugs.
There
We
you
will
go.
give you a personal trainer. Like, people around, I feel like we would love that. Great.
Totally. But again, I don't want to take the responsibility off the individual and onto the personal trainer. It's still the individual's person, the person who's training, who's committed training. It's on them to show up and to wake up and to do the hard things. It's just the personal trainer's there to help with that.
Dusty, what do you say to the person who says, I don't know that I feel qualified or that I'm ready to have a personal trainer?
Join the club. Like, seriously, that's how you join. Like, join the club. Nobody ever feels qualified to take a next step, right? If you felt qualified, you wouldn't be taking the next step anyways, or you would already have been there and you'd be training somebody else. Like, to do anything in life, you have to take a first step when you don't feel qualified, and you have to do a little bit of on-the-job training.
Yeah.
So, like, everything in development, how we develop as people is always to step outside of our comfort, go into something that we're a little bit, our head's a little bit below the water on, and then we work to try to get our head above water, and then we've learned something we can pass on to another generation. But that's how we're designed to grow.
Yeah.
Same question to you. How do you overcome the fear of ineptness?
You just do it. Like, I think that's where Nike comes in so strong. Like, you just have to do it. And it's so helpful if someone has been doing it with you to give you the confidence. This is where the personal trainer affirmation voice comes in, where they can say, hey, you've been doing it with me. You can go do this with somebody else. Or, hey, I think you can get off the couch and you can join me and we can do this together. It depends if you're discipling or disciple making. But either way, having somebody to walk alongside of you to give you that word of encouragement, I think is really important.
Yeah, I think that you'll never actually overcome the fear.
Nope.
But rather just don't let the fear make the decision.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think that's probably for me the biggest point is like your emotions are designed to be decision points, but not decision makers. And fear is just a really important emotion that we need to pay attention to, but just don't live there.
Yeah. And who did Jesus pick to be his disciples?
Right.
Unschooled, ordinary fishermen.
Man, the more I read the text, the better I feel about being a disciple of Jesus.
Yeah.
Because those boys are crazy.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. All right, Dust, closing thoughts.
I think maybe for me, it's to free yourself up from the pressure of feeling like you have to master anything before you just get your hands dirty and do it. So like disciple making is a process. Like if I ever ask you two guys, like, hey, do you feel like you're master disciple makers at this point?
No.
And you guys have been doing it. And according to most people's definition, they say, yeah, you guys probably more than any of us because you've been doing it for a long time. But like the point is we never get there, right? It's always an ebb and flow of like we do great for seasons of our life and we might have to recalibrate and might have to go back into it. That perseverance piece comes in. And like I've got piano students that will come in and this happens all the time and it's hilarious to me, but there's a spiritual lesson in that where they'll say, hey, I've got this song down. I've mastered it. Actually, maybe one of the very seen kids that said that one time. He's like, I think Logan came in, I was doing a sax lesson, and he was like, hey, like I mastered this song. I was like, I'll be the judge of that.
Yeah.
No, you did not. No, in a beautiful way. Like,
Love's low.
yeah, that's right. No, but it was great. But you got to free yourself up from the idea that you have to perfect something and that you're ever going to perfect it. You just have to try. And disciple making is all about just signing up for the journey.
Yeah, I would just agree. Like messy disciple making is real, and it's all the reason why the Prism is such a great tool is that it reminds us that there are so many different facets to reflecting the light of Jesus in the world. And so just be one of the facets. You don't have to do it perfectly. God can cover anything that you can mess up, right? He can fix it. He will. Like he'll intervene when he needs to. Has been my experience. And so, closing words.
Yeah, man, you can't change the world without being intentional. You just can't.
I love it.
Yep.
Yeah, I love it. Well, friends, that's our podcast for today. Closing thoughts before you leave for 2 months. We're gonna miss you, buddy.
Oh, I will miss you guys. Man, thanks so much for watching. I hope you guys continue to watch, whether we take a break or not. I don't know if we made that decision.
We have not made that decision. Only one person responded so far.
So we appreciate that. And that was a positive feedback for you guys to keep going.
Yeah,
So,
it was. It
so
was.
appreciate that. But
So
if we take a break, we'll let you guys know when we jump back in, and I'm looking forward to jumping back in. I love this time. This is just a fun recap of Refresh and just real honest. As you guys know, we don't plan anything.
there's no maniacal planning
There's
here.
no. That was an inside joke. But there's no planning here. It's just raw, honest conversations that we can have together.
It's the good stuff.
Yep.
And we do it for you, our church family, hoping and praying that you feel more connected to what God is doing in and through this church. So if there's anything that we can do, Dusty or I specifically can do to walk alongside you, don't hesitate to let us know. Until next time, remember, no one walks alone.